So there's one big question mark this offseason for the Packers, and that is what the Packers are going to do with upcoming free agent center Josh Myers. He's about to enter free agency if the Packers don't decide to bring him back, so he could decide to go out on the market and see what other teams are willing to pay him, which could potentially be more than the Packers are willing to pay him. And earlier today, Mason Crosby responded to a couple tweets on X and gave some thoughts on this situation. First off, we have this tweet from Zach Cruz. He responds to the question from the Packers Wire that says, should the Packers re-sign center Josh Myers? He responds, I'm a strong no on this. Let someone else pay him. The Packers need to take another step along the offensive line, and paying Myers a bunch of money doesn't help that goal. He's been a consistently below average player, and the Packers have so many internal options at center. I tend to agree with that statement. Then Mason Crosby responds here at Crosby Kicks 2, says, Packers will for sure try and re-sign him, in parentheses, at a discount, no doubt. So Mason Crosby believes that the Packers will decide to try to re-sign Josh Myers at a discount. The question becomes, are there other teams out there that are willing to pay more to Josh Myers? And if that was the case, I would assume that he would not end up back on the Packers. Then he responded to a few different tweets as well. We have here from Peter Bukowski, who says, feels like a John Runyon Jr. situation where the team would be willing to re-sign him at a number below what he can get on the open market. Mason Crosby says exactly. So it sounds like Mason Crosby believes the Packers will try to re-sign him, but offer him, maybe less than he thinks he's worth, which then could lead to him signing elsewhere. He responds to one more person here from Just a Packers Fan, says, maybe for like $3 million a year for 2 years, and hopefully someone develops and he becomes depth. Mason responds, he will get way more than that. When we look at Josh Myers, I think initially looking at one of Brian Gutekunst's quotes about Myers and how it had been his best year in 2024, I was leaning towards the Packers, I said it here, probably re-signing him from that quote. But as time's gone on, and I've looked at some other Gutekunst quotes from the past, I don't necessarily buy or at least I don't think that the quotes we have from Gutekunst convinced me that even if he had all these great things to say about Josh Myers, the Packers are 100% going to bring him back. Because earlier today, before I was making this video, I went back to look at the quote that Gutekunst said about Aaron Jones before the Packers moved on from him. And here's the quote. Gutekunst said, yeah, absolutely. I think we'd love to have Aaron back. We're still kind of putting all those things together as far as how we want to move forward. But I mean, he was such a difference maker when he was out there this year. The way our offense was able to move, he changed a lot of the way we operated when he was in there and when he was healthy. I think for us, it's finding a way to keep him out there and keep him healthy, but he was such an influential leader in our locker room. He's just really kind of the heartbeat of our team. That's kind of the anticipation that he'll be back. And then as we all know, what happened next? The Packers decide to, move on from Aaron Jones. They basically offer him near a 50% pay cut. Jones seems to get frustrated, and then he decides to sign with the Minnesota Vikings. And so I think that the point made there by Zach Cruz, which was the initial tweet that Mason Crosby responded to, makes a lot of sense. I think that the Packers, may want to have him back on a super, super cheap contract, but I would have to believe that maybe someone else out there would offer him more money than the Packers would be willing to offer him. And then I also, based off that, the Packers, I shared the first quote there because Gutekunst did have a lot of great things to say about Josh Myers, which I'll read here. He said this in his postseason press conference. I thought he had his best year. He dealt with some things during this year that were tough, and I thought he fought through it like a champion. He's certainly an asset to our football team. I know Jordan trusts him very much as a center. He's a UFA, so we'll see where all that goes, but I can't say enough good things about Josh Myers, not only as a player, but as a leader. He really does embody a Green Bay Packer and kind of what we're looking for. So when I heard that at first, I was like, man, I don't necessarily think the Packers should bring Myers back based on his production, but Gutekunst sounds, very up on Josh Myers. And so that's why I initially thought that Myers, would come back based on that quote. But the more I thought about it, I was like, you know what? Gutekunst doesn't always, based on his quotes, you would have thought that the Packers would keep Aaron Jones after him calling Jones the heartbeat of the team and even saying he anticipated him coming back. you would assume that the Packers would have signed Aaron Jones, and that didn't happen. So that's why I think we do have to take some of these quotes with a grain of salt. And so when we look at Josh Myers, here's from PFF. I ordered it here by most pressures allowed among centers. And as you can see, Josh Myers has the third most pressures allowed in 2024 at 31 pressures allowed. And I don't always buy into PFF's grades, but just to show you here, they have him graded as the 38th center out of 40 centers. So they're not super high on Josh Myers there. And now when we look at the center market, this is on overthecap.com. This is ranking based on the highest average per year. So you can see Creed Humphrey of the Chiefs is making the most per year at $18 million per year. Frank Ragnow, $13.5 million. Lloyd Cushenberry, $12.5 million. And the center is definitely the lowest paid position on the offensive line. And if we look at the 10th highest paid center, Ted Karras at $6 million per year. 15th highest paid is Jake Brendan at $4.125 million. Then 20th, we have Nick Harris at $2.395 million. And so, considering at least from a pass blocking perspective, Myers was one of the least productive when it came to pressures allowed. I don't think that he, should be getting top 5 money at all. I think that top 10 money would still be slightly too expensive at $6 million per year. It is super cheap. So if the Packers really like the fact that they think that Myers as a center and Jordan Love as the quarterback have a solid connection, maybe they're saying, you know what, we'll pay him $6 million a year. But just based, relative to these other guys, I think he's more, in the 20s when it comes to centers. And so obviously with the salary cap always going up, it's not just based off of, okay, where would we rank this guy? Let's pay him as the 20th ranked guy if we think he's the 20th best player. Teams have to pay up. Just like with quarterbacks, you have these guys who definitely aren't the best quarterback in the league getting number one quarterback money. I think that it would be too much to pay him more than maybe $5 million per year. And that's a question. Are there other teams out there that will be willing to pay Josh Myers more than that? I think it's a possibility just because when you have 31 other teams, there could be some teams out there that don't really have a great answer at center, and maybe they're willing to take a chance on Josh Myers, who I think still is probably a starting center in the NFL. And then the question becomes, if the Packers decide to move on from Josh Myers, who are they going to bring in, or how are they going to move that offensive line around to replace him if he decides to go elsewhere, if the Packers don't pay him what he thinks he deserves? Here's again from PFF, and so I was looking at these stats here, and you can see on the right side, it's showing how many snaps each guy had at what position, and you can see Josh Myers pretty much had all of the center snaps, 1,067. He has been very healthy over the years, which is great. He seemingly fought through some things this year. Then you can see next we have Elton Jenkins with 72 snaps at center, and then Sean Ryan with 9 snaps. And those are the only other guys who took snaps at center outside of Josh Myers. So we know that Elton Jenkins is a very solid offensive lineman. He's a very good guard. I think he can play any position. So he's a possibility at center if the Packers move on from Josh Myers. You also have Sean Ryan, the fact that he played some snaps at center, which means the Packers at least think that he could be an option as well. And then we have another guy here. If I scroll up here, we have Jacob Monk, center/guard. He was drafted last year, and he played some center in college. So there's a lot of different options here to replace Josh Myers, and so it could be that if the Packers think that it's too expensive to bring back Josh Myers, there are a lot of options already on the roster. So there's a lot of decisions to make going forward with this offensive line. There's a lot of players who have that flexibility to play multiple positions, which I think bodes well for them trying to replace Myers if they don't bring him back. But I think, paying him more than $5 million per year is probably too expensive for the Packers. So we'll see what happens there. But if you want more Packers content, feel free to subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys next time.